Namaste everyone, welcome to MMK The Eagle View. Today we are going to see a very important update on the Ram Mandir inauguration. I think the entire country has witnessed it, Hindus around the world. A lot of people from other faith did celebrate, relish it, and there were a few critics to it. It's a democratic country, nothing wrong about it. So you can re-look at, or if you have missed it, Mahesh Aditya has done a wonderful piece, research article on the geopolitical impact of Ram Mandir and India's use of soft power globally, to achieve its geopolitical ambitions as a country. It's a very beautiful piece. The link is there in the description. Please do watch it. Now let's see the reactionary part of it. So if you look at Pakistan, which was once seemed to be or projected itself as a leader of Islamic nations, especially Zia-ul-Haq, when these generals were ruling, Pakistan was the pivot of the Islamic countries. They had the so-called Islamic bomb, the nuclear bomb, and they were kind of having that big brother role. If any Islamic nation comes into a problem, we are there to help it out. And today this nation has become irrelevant. So why am I saying this is in the context of Pakistan's foreign office disappointment on Ram Mandir's inauguration. A 500-year-old mosque was demolished, and then there was a flawed verdict from the constitutional bench of the Supreme Court. The so-called democracy has got a permanent blot in it. It's a permanent black mark in it. So just look at the words. Firstly, they have raised a mosque. It was an illegally built structure. The Supreme Court verdict has been flawed. It's a flawed democracy. It's a blot on so-called India's democracy, and they can never come out of it. And our minorities, especially our Muslim brothers, live in kind of fear. And this is not acceptable to Pakistan. Firstly, nobody had asked for their acceptance of what a temple inauguration is happening here, about a temple inauguration happening here. I don't know why somebody would want their acceptance to build a mosque as per a Supreme Court verdict. The community here, both Hindus and Muslims, yes, they have differences here and there, but we stand united as a country. There is no doubts about it. There were political pundits, experts. They said, if you touch build Ram Mandir, there will be bloodbath in the country. Nothing of that sort happened. Everything went peacefully. We agreed to the reality. And even if you look at the left narrative of this, Romila Thapar and Ram Chandra, all these guys, they were hell-bent in changing the history. And when the Muslims themselves were after reading the archaeological report, when themselves were okay, and they kind of wanted to give this and settle this once for all, and to build their own mosque in a close by place. So two faith with two different of religious identity have their own religious place of worship, and then the Hindus have their mandir, and Muslims have their mosque, and then they can exist peacefully and coexist peacefully. And this city will be like the major religious tourism destination place in the world in the coming days. We are going to witness it. But these guys went and said that no, don't approve for the archaeological survey, stand by it. So this got delayed, and eventually it happened a couple of years before, and now we have seen the Mandir back in its place, which was destroyed by Babur a long time ago. So now Pakistan's stand of about this Ram Mandir is really they have to express it. It's a really uncalled for. There is no much of interest shown by their own people in it, because they have their laundry list of problems to handle. Now look at the other Islamic countries. We would have seen our Honorable Minister Smriti Irani ji visiting Saudi, and there was a very famous photograph. She was not wearing a head cover. There is no cover in her head, scarf in her head. Whereas when couple of years before, when Madam Sushma Swaraj ji went there, she was covering her head, and now they say what kind of acceptance we have, what kind of good relations we have in the Middle East. So the Saudi, which holds the key to the Sunni Islamic world, hasn't reacted anything. and Iran and other countries who hold the key to the Shia Muslim society hasn't also reacted much to it. There was no much of reactions from elsewhere, even from Turkey. There were murmurs here and there. There were celebrations in the Western world. I had a call from one of my friends in Atlanta where he said that this entire city has been lighted. There's a major celebration which is going on. Such celebrations are not been done even during Diwali. So the Western world, which has sizable Indian diaspora, is part of the this problem. Part of this celebration. Whereas if you look at the left, the media, especially the BBC and its likes, they were showing it repeatedly on a different tone. It was not about this thing. It was about Hindu majoritarianism. And the Supreme Court has given a 1,000-page verdict which clearly tells each and every aspect of this case, right from where it started, the existence of Ram, the proof which was submitted, the proof which was rejected. Archaeological survey can never go wrong. It is based on carbon dating. It's based on science. So every single thing was put in, and then the final constitutional bench of 5 senior most judges, including this, the Supreme Court's Chief Justice of India, has delivered this verdict. So you can read all those things, but this guys kept on building the narrative. So if you see, the Islamic world has kind of not made any such noise. They are okay, and they have their own set of problems to deal with, and they recognize the legitimacy of this particular temple. You have seen this temple being built in UAE now. There's going to be a movement where you've seen Lord Balaji's temple, which is there in Tirupati. The main temple is there in Tirupati. Lot of such temples have been built across the world. Similarly, we have seen, we are going to see this temple going globally, not only for Indian population. It's a spiritual expansion of Bharat. This has restarted it. We have restarted it, possibly after Swami Vivekananda's time. So it's a movement in itself. It's not something to do with a piece of real estate where something was destroyed by Mughals and something else was destroyed. Again, this Mandir was rebuilt. It's just not about the Mandir, it's about the dharmic principles of Bharat going globally. Because this world, at the current situation, with the number of wars which I have seen in the past and which is going to come in the future, if something which binds all of us together, which is basis social justice and equality, we are going to be in a place where these wars will keep happening. The subversive activities will keep happening. The wars not only in the military front, hard wars, soft wars in various forms will keep happening, which is not good for any single living creature in the planet. So none of them made much of a noise. And the countries towards our east, especially China hasn't spoken a word. If you really keenly observe it, China hasn't spoken a word because they have a lot of cultural similarity with India. There was a saying by British, I think 100 years before, if China and India is together, then nothing can stop them in the world. Unfortunately, Chinese leadership, led by their communist principles, have developed a hostility with India. We are forced. But the Chinese people per se and the Chinese population also haven't reacted much in the Weibo, their own social media platform. I was observing it yesterday. There is no much of noise from the government. They are like literally, why? Because when we look at the homogenization process driven by China, especially on their Uyghur Muslims, who are sizable, 3 crore of a population, a lot of atrocities were done, a lot of homogenization was done, a lot of their structures were brought down and they were homogenized to be like a normal Mandarin speaking Chinese. The ethnic standardization, or we call it as ethnic normalization, that was happening, and India didn't react much. It was an internal issue to deal with China, because even the Islamic countries haven't reacted anything to it, be it Saudi, be it UAE, be it Qatar, be it Iran, or even the ones which speak much about the human rights. The Western countries haven't reacted much. Few countries like UK had put some ban on exports coming up from Xinjiang province, which is the homeland for the Uyghur Muslims, but they haven't reacted much. We haven't reacted much about it in a geopolitical sense, because none of the countries which were supposed to take, or which claimed to take, the ownership of the Islamic world haven't uttered a single word about it. When this was asked to Imran Khan, then Prime Minister of Pakistan, he said, "I'm not aware about it." the plight of the Uyghur Muslims, the world knows it, and the Prime Minister of Pakistan, who's supposed to be the leader, global leader of the Islamic countries, then was not aware of what that people have undergone. So it's more to do with geopolitical and also ideological. The world is moving on at a very rapid pace. Most of these Gulf countries are commodity based. It's based on oil and natural gas. So the luxury of oil and natural gas, none of us know really when this is going to stop. They are looking to diversify their economy, because you can't be relying on commodity based economy, because it's vulnerable to a lot of shocks. It's vulnerable to a lot of ups and downs. So the world per se has in a range of 0 to 10 gladly had accepted it. I would say 8 to 10 about this particular temple being reinstated. And if you look at the Prime Minister's words per se, yesterday's speech was pretty strong. He has mentioned about the culture which was there existing, the 1,000 years of slavery under various foreign rules, be it the Islamic invaders, be it Mughals, be it British, parts of occupation like was done by Portuguese, which was done by Dutch, which was done by the Brits and the French. So all this put together, we have lost track of what we were as a civilization for the past 1,000 years. And he says that this is the time where we are going to rebuild our culture for the next 1,000 years. It's not just a temple inauguration. A lot of people asked about this particular inauguration. Yes, as a faith, as a person who believes in Hindu faith, who practices, who goes to temple, yes, I did do celebrate yesterday's thing, but it has a very larger civilizational geopolitical change, which we will see in the coming 100 to 200 years. This is going to be a pretty long journey, but the cultural change. Look at Russia. When it was a Soviet bloc, when it was a Soviet republic, which was then a strong communist stronghold, none of the religious identity was allowed, and they were officially, the government was an atheist. They didn't believe in, communists don't believe in religion, at least in open. So these guys had declared that as a kind of an atheist country where religious practices were not allowed in it, the tune which it has to be. It was all restricted. The communism was the basic identity which was binding the nation. The moment it collapsed, it took just few years for those Orthodox churches to come up in Russia, which is a major part of Soviet bloc. So today, if you look at Russia, the Orthodox Christians, the priests, they are a very, very strong lobby. They are very, very powerful. Putin identifies himself as a very Orthodox Christian. You can see his pictures taking a holy dip in the river or practicing, going to churches. He is very, very vocal and very published about his own Christian identity as an Orthodox Christian identity. Similar things happened in Europe. Similar thing happened in Spain. Similar thing happened in a lot of countries. So the moment the invaders move out or their ideology fades, this eventually has to happen, but for us it took much a longer time. So now when we speak about, people get mixed with being an Hindu Rashtra. It's not. When Prime Minister, when he says about Ram Rajya, it actually means a Rajya, a kingdom or a rule which is equal for all. That's the most pertinent thing in India, where we have seen a lot of Dalit movements, we have seen a lot of movements against atrocities, religious, linguistic, caste minorities, the people who have been listed by British as low caste and high caste. We still see this. This country has to move forward. We all has to stand united. For that, you need to have a common platform, which is our constitution. So this particular call of the Ram's path falls very much under the constitution. If you look at the Rajya of what Prime Minister is narrating with our own constitution, it clearly lists that everybody has their right to speech, their right to practice their faith, but within the gambit of the constitution, they have right to freedom of expression. Then you have right to education, right for food security, and so on. So the path has been set now, and it requires a binding agent, because today wokeism around the globe is eating away the youth, especially the 2K generation. When I was discussing with one of my close friends, he said we had the single parenting concept where the male or the female adopts a child or tooth surrogacy or means, they have a child without a family, and then later it said pet parents, where you have a pet, the pet is supposed to be your child, and then you don't need a family to actually do it. But now we have, the level has gone up to a level of plant or a plant parent. You have a small tree, or maybe a bonsai, where then you say this is my kid, and I take care of it. You go carry it like your own kid. So if you look at this clearly indicates that if you don't have a cultural factor binding you, if you don't have a cultural value binding you, your future generation is vulnerable to this. UK is already facing it, the Western world is already facing it. Wokeism is going to be the next big threat, more than even terrorism, I would say. It is slowly eating up people. You don't want to take responsibility, you don't want to have a family, then you adopt to all these means, and then you have the own ways and means of looking cool. So this will eventually drop the fertility rate or the childbirth rate, TFR. If that drops, when the population starts negative, we have seen China, we have seen Japan, most of the declining population suffer, and then it's a major threat. Elon Musk once said that the major threat to the human world, humanity, is not wars, not terrorism, not religion. It is a declining population. So the population has to be at a certain standard level. So you can't have a communist regime to enforce it. Suddenly you tell people to have one kid in 1980s, and then today you say that no, better go and have 3 kids. It doesn't work that way. It really requires a moral, cultural, and spiritual fabric to bind all this. That's what Prime Minister has been saying. I had said that in this historic speech yesterday at Ayodhya. But if you overall look at the perspective now, geopolitical perspective now, Ram Mandir is going to be really big. It's not just about the Mandir, it is an ecosystem, it's a tourism. People who are spiritually wired, who don't know really what to do, people from one faith really don't have, or lost, or have attained saturation in that particular faith. They are in the 4th level of Maslow's hierarchy, theory of hierarchy, where you actually go and seek where am I and what am I here for. So those things require such places, require such historic monuments where we have rebuilt one of it. It's going to become that. It's going to be a place for Hindus across the world and people who believe in Hindu faith, the other pagan worlds. Who I have seen a lot of tweets today in X platform, where a lot of pagan worshippers who had their own way of worshipping, who had their own gods, have been demolished completely by certain faiths which were historic and a massive rapid rise way back 1300 years back. Now they all want to revisit and reclaim their own way of spirituality. So this movement is slowly spurting up. We don't know how much we could revive as citizens of this world, but eventually the thought process of reviving those cultures and values and traditions have started it. So this is what I always tell my friends. It's a matter of renaissance. It's a matter of just not a temple being built. It's a matter of renaissance. But how much years we will gradually see this happening, we will see, because it's a world of electronics, it's a world of communication. We'll get to know what is happening at a very, very faster rate. But this is where the turnaround, where he said that Kal Chakra has restarted again, where 1000 years before, when this entire thing we got enslaved and we got our culture, everything destroyed, we could hardly reclaim 1 or 2% of it. Forget about the wealth part, which was looted by British and all Mughals, which is in excess of $3 trillion as on today. But those things can be earned, but not our spiritual and cultural values. So that's where we have restarted it. It's going to be a mass movement. It's going to be a spiritual movement, and it's going to be a cultural movement as well. So let's see how this goes forward. But overall, there is no much of a geopolitical in this thing. And secondly, most of the Western media, which is a very, very strong critic of such political, left-leaning politics here, which is very, very strong critic of the right-wing politics, so-called, they also started realizing that there are certain, people, renowned journalists who started saying the election results are already out. We know what is going to come. It is not about one man. It is not about one party. It is about a culture. This is what people are failing to realize or failing to understand. Whether if you look at the opposition parties, everybody is like literally running like a pack of headless chickens. Somebody says I'll go and visit day after. Mamata Banerjee in West Bengal, she went for a rally with all three faiths, great photo ops. Somebody says we believe it, but we don't attend the function, we'll go later. We are more Hindus than you. There were posters in Madhya Pradesh Congress office where they celebrated it. They said we will give you the real Ram Rajya. So the gambit of opposition parties, the political scenario itself has changed now, has come into that bracket of culture. If you keenly observe these political rallies in the next 5 months, except few rhetorics, you will keenly observe this. So it is also changing the political scenario of India. Now, how further this will go depends on who are the leaders who will take this forward. I am not specific to a party BJP, I am not specific to a party Congress. Leaders are leaders, but the fabric in which this politics will be played, the sphere in which this politics will be played, will be based on our past culture and our future ambitions and our capabilities as scientists, as researchers, as academicians, as economy, as everything. So soft power is one thing which will be exported, which will visually be seen. We have seen yoga reaching out to almost 136 plus countries now. We have seen Diwali as a festival reaching to multiple countries now. Similarly, this particular change has been initiated at a massive level. So from this focal point, it is now going to go global. In our era, we will witness this. So very specific to this video, if you have your own comments, thoughts about what we spoke today, please do drop a comment. And those who have missed watching Aditya's video, I have given the link in the description. Please do go and watch. It's a must and a well researched article by Mahesh Aditya. Thank you all. Jai Hind.